Hello, everyone. Good morning, or whatever it is where you are right now. Let me just get started here. So, for those of you who are joining a stream for the first time, I am Chris Benjaminson, and I am the founder of FRVR. On Fridays, I try to do a stream where I make a game with FRVR.ai, and what we're trying to do with FRVR.ai is create a tool or product that allows anyone to create any game. Of course, that's a big aspiration, so we're starting at one corner of that problem and slowly moving from there. We try to have at least weekly releases with new features coming out on the product. And today we are going to see if we can make sort of a more classical match 3 game similar to what you would expect out of a Candy Crush or a Bejeweled. So that direction of games. Historically, when streaming, we have done some fairly sort of dogmatic pretending that we don't know how to code, or in some cases pretending we know to code a little bit. Today we're going to do something different. We are going to treat the tool as a development platform. I'm going to pretend that I know how to code. We'll see how that goes. And the idea with today's stream is more trying to behave as a developer and think and demonstrate how to think as a developer when you're working through the problems that is to create a game or try to achieve a particular goal, right? So if we get started here we are on FRVR.ai. I'm just on the main page. Click the creator tab. I'm already an approved creator, so I can go and I can create a new game. So we're going to create a match 3 game. And I know the system quite well, so we're going to be cheating a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and say, create a game similar to Candy Crush or Bejeweled. Just providing the initial AI generation step as much context as we possibly can with the direction we're going in here. And I can't spell Bejeweled, that's great. So let's see what happens here. And what the AI is doing here is it's basically setting up the first version of the game. So it's generating the first set of code, the first icon, the first landscape banner, and also auto-generating a bunch of hashtags to be used on the sort of more social side of the product where anyone can go and play the games we are creating. I'm also in the stream trying to share what we are creating a lot earlier than we have historically. So a cool thing about the FRVR AI platform is that it's basically a live creation platform in that anyone is able to go and play whatever is being created in a live fashion, as long as you have the magical link to the game. So I can go over here, I can press save, and that sort of commits the current game to the platform. And if I press preview, then I get a link that is publicly available if you know the secret URL. So I'm just going to share this around all the different places we're streaming. So we're streaming on YouTube, we're streaming on Discord, and we are streaming on Twitch at the same time. So we are absolutely everywhere. So before we sort of dive in and start working on this game, let's have a little look at what the AI has generated for the first version of the game. So you can see it's created a gem asset. It's created a board abstraction. So this is sort of the code wherein all the logic related to actually building a game is contained, or sort of the controls over the game board, right? And down here we have a gem or a tile, and there's also a bunch of sort of preparatory work the large language model have created, where it's basically saying, I want to go and fill out this logic later on, right? And then it actually initializes this board here. You can see it sort of sets up all the elements. It has a fixed gem size, which I'm not necessarily unhappy about. If we go and modify this and call it 110, if everything goes as it should, yeah, it spaces out the board, right? So it decided we wanted an 8x8 grid for our game. I'm not unhappy about that. I think that's a perfectly viable size for a game of this type. I do not like, however, that that this is hard coded. However, in lieu of creating an instance of a gem and then reading the size of the gem, well, we could actually do that. I think that would be perfectly viable. Let's do that. So we can go in here and we can create like a measure gem. So now we're creating an instance of the gem class for the sole purpose of knowing how big it is. So this is functionally the same now. However, if we go over here in the asset modifier and we make the assets twice as big and we reload, so now everything is sort of automatically dynamically adjusted based on the size of the asset here, which just makes things a little bit easier when we then go and work on different things. For whatever reason, though, the alignment here is no longer correctly off on the board here. So there's something around this X, Y, Z positioning of the elements. Let's go have a look at what's going on there. So first of all, if we just set this to 0, what happens? Yeah, okay, so what's happening here is that each gem element here has an anchor point. So the way that works is that you can sort of decide where your center point of an element is. And these gems that we are creating here have an anchor that is in the center of the screen. And this alignment code down here doesn't correctly adjust for that. It is beneficial to have the center be in the center of the graphics object here rather than being in the corner, even though that it might cause some complexity. And the reason for that is if we go in here and just set a random rotation on each element, you can sort of see how they are rotated around the center of their graphical asset rather than being centered around the corner, which is what would happen if we were to go and change this to 0. So you can see, well, it's not necessarily obvious, but what's happening now and the reason everything sort of seems much more misaligned is that the rotation is now around this corner up here rather than being around the center. And that makes it much harder if we, say, wanted to wiggle things or make things shake later in the game to make it look good. So we're going to persist having it centered around the corner here, and then simply down in the alignment code here, we're gonna compensate for sort of this offset, which is easily done by adding half a gem size to the calculation of the alignment on both the X and Y direction. So now it should be centered. It still doesn't look 100% centered. What would cause that? Am I just seeing things? I think I might just be seeing things. Let's remove this rotation. So the alignment is not the same. Anybody out there have a good idea what's going on here? Is it the spacing that does it? It probably is. So if I change this to 0, do we? Nope, we do not. Nah. So now the question is, what is going on here? The spacing is a problem as well, though. We're going to make this a variable. Then we're going to use this spacing. And then we would want to add half the spacing as well to the alignment code here. Didn't do a lot, so it's not the predominant issue we're having here. Why is there an init method? So this entire thing is completely unnecessary, so we can just get rid of that. And we no longer have an init method, of course, so we want to get rid of that as well. There we go. Same code, simpler code. Again, we're just fixing what the AI is doing, cheating a little bit here, as we are totally a developer. Let's have a look. What is going on here? Let's just zero align this again. Oh, so the board color, so that's the size of the, that's fine. We'll just do this again. Let's just do this from scratch. Let's revert that change. See if we can figure out what is going on here. Now it's 0 plus board.gem size divided by 2. That's with a large S. Is it now completely correctly aligned there to the corner? Yes, I think it is. And then we want to plus board.rows times board.gem size. That sounds about right. Yep. Oh, is it because I'm... yeah, okay. So I'm messing up here. I see what I'm doing. Let's just undo here. How far do we have to go back? So you can see I'm dividing by 2 here, but I'm also dividing by 2 here. So I'm dividing by 2 twice, which probably shouldn't be doing, which means I was adding 1/4 of an offset, not 1/2. And there. So now we have a very nice little grid that is centered in the screen. If we change the size of an asset, so we can say if we make this 230 larger, it should auto align and basically still be centered. So it's probably more an appropriate size that we are having here. We can push it up and down, right? So we have an X component here. So if we wanted to push it down, we could just do that by multiplying it because everything is contained inside the board class. So now we have a grid that we can use to go build our game. I'm just going to delete these methods here. We're probably gonna need those a little bit later, but for now we're gonna ignore that. So an interesting thing when it comes to building sort of this type of game is that there's generally different schools of what happens when you play a match 3 game, right? So I think I managed to get this to work here. Let's just see yeah. So here's my fancy iPad, and I can draw with my finger. So don't judge me on my drawing, right? But imagine we have our game, and we are trying to sort of allow a match of 2 tiles, right? So we have tile 1 and tile B, and we want to sort of swap those back and forward. There's 2 schools of thought around match 3 games, which is that while a swap is happening, you can either lock the entire board, so no user input is allowed to happen, or you can allow users to keep having sort of input while swapping these 2 tiles over here. And the complexity of allowing you to actually modify the board while something else is happening on the board is a little bit more complicated, but something that is achievable if you know that's a requirement for the product that you're building. So I personally like match 3 games that allows the more complicated structure. So that's the direction we're going to go in today, and hopefully we can have a prototype working of that particular type of game working today. So we also know that we want the game to feel good while we're doing it, right? Like a requirement of a good casual game is that it has a good feeling. And the way we're going to achieve that is we're going to allow you to sort of grab a tile. So I'm pressing down now, and then swap it over by dragging it over. And to help sort of make that interaction feel really well, we are gonna allow you to sort of push a tile out of its natural resting place where it is right now, and let it sort of get into, or sort of be dragged over where we want it with some threshold. And when we cross that threshold, we are going to swap the tiles, right? So I think the first thing we would want to do is we would want to introduce a concept onto the gems that is the target of where the gem should be right now. right? So right now, when we look at the initial generation code, we can see that we basically set the X and the Y position of the tile where we want them to be. But what I think we want to do instead is we want to have a concept of a target position of a gem. That way we can have sort of where the gem actually is in terms of our internal representation of the gem in the grid, completely disconnected from where is the gem visually right now, right? And that allows us to add a whole bunch of very nice animations to the thing. So as a simple example, what we could do is we could go here and add target X and target Y variables. And rather than setting X and Y up here, we would set target X and target Y. And now you can see all the elements are in the same position. And what you can then do in update is we can automatically animate to the target X position. And we can do that simply by saying and we want to add that on. Why did that not work? Self-that update should be called... Oh, so wrong place. I am writing in the wrong location. Down here instead. Self-that update. Set-that target X. Just debugging if this is actually being called. Oh, so there's a whole bunch of errors in here. That's great. Which should have been... Let's just remove this code here. We don't want that. Let's reload the project. Oh. So apparently there was a JavaScript error in that I was hiding. I need to figure out what went wrong there. I'll go review the stream because it should most definitely not be the case that that an error isn't auto-detected. I'm just going to stop the code here because I don't want it to. There we go. Okay, so let's try that again. So now we have sort of a tween towards the X position of the board, and now we're adding a tween to the Y position of the board as well. So let's just add this in here. There we go. So what happens here is that we add the tiles in, we set the X target of the tile, and then we, in the update method, basically say, let's move, if, like what this code functionally does is it says, what is the difference between where we want to be and where we are? Divide that by 10 and add it to where we are right now. That's going to result in sort of a nice little tween that sort of pushes the tiles to where we want them. Of course, when the game initializes, we don't want that to happen. So what we can do is we can just forcefully set the X and the Y in the same code as before. And then when the game starts now, all the tiles are exactly where we want them to get started. That allows us to do a little bit of animation, which is super great, which means we can start working on what happens when you start dragging a tile, right? And you can see there's already a little bit of code related to sort of trying to, like the AI did a little bit of prefacing. I deleted this method. This method doesn't exist anymore. So we would want to go and re-establish this method, which is like creating a drag event handler for what happens when I press a gem, right? So we insert the gem. The onDown method is automatically being called when you press down or if you tap an element or tap and hold an element. So let's go add this method called select gem to the board or to the game. So let's add this function here, and this takes a gem. So it's a particular gem, right? So now we no longer get an error when we do this. And what we can do here is we can say let's have a variable that is the current node that can be dragged, and we're going to add that in here. So now what's happening is that we are setting the current drag node to the gem that we pass down from this click here. So when you press down on this element, we are calling this select gem method with self, which is a reference to this instance of the gem object. Again, we know how to code. And we now have a reference to this. And what we can then do is we can on move on the game method, we can say if there is a current drag node, let's move that current drag node to where we're currently dragging. So now if I press and I move around, you can see that this element sort of gets attached to my mouse, and the code that sends the tile back to where it should be is still active, right? So the element only gets moved when I'm moving the mouse, and the second I stop moving the mouse, it basically gets adjusted back to where it is. And as you can see, we're sort of offset. Like the tile is not perfectly under the mouse, where we sort of pressed it right. So if I press here and I move, you can see it gets offset, and that's of course because there's an offset on board X and board Y. So we're just gonna negate those. So we are removing that offset. So now the tile will always be perfectly at the center of my mouse, or should be perfectly at the center of my mouse. Yeah, it's perfectly at the center of my mouse here when I move around. Of course, that's also not what we want. We would want a tile when we press it. So if I start dragging up here, we don't want it to sort of magically just spawn up and flow up to the left. We would want that offset that we have on the element to be maintained, and we get that offset in on the down method here up in the gem class, right? So we can pass those off on to the select gem method. So we have this here, so we're already getting the gem. So what we're doing now is we're making those available globally in the code. So current drag node X 0, 0, and then we set these variables. Okay, so now we have these variables available to us, and we can now use those as a offset to calculate where should the center anchor point be when we try to move an element here, right? And I have to think a little bit here on how do we integrate that into our code. Is that a minus? So it's a center point right now. I have no idea. We're just gonna try something here and see how bad it is. So if I press down, yeah, okay. So that actually just worked. It's because the center point is automatically calculated. That is not non-obvious, right? But yeah, so this works, right? So if I press up in the corner here and drags now, we sort of have a natural dragging position. It is a little bit annoying that it keeps sort of moving back when I stop moving here. So we would wanna make sure that this update method here is only called if we are not currently dragging this node, right? And because this is defined in the global scale, we can just go in here and basically say if the current drag node is not this particular instance of gem, then run this code. So now this element is no longer sort of being automatically moved. Of course, when we then stop pressing the game, so game.up, we would want to stop trying to drag this node. So we can go in here and do this. So we can set the current drag node to null or undefined. Let's do undefined. Can't spell. And now when I let go of the node, it sort of flows back to where it were before, right? So you can grab a node, you can move it around, and then you can let it go. Let's add a little bit of art to this node here, because there's a bunch of things I want to address around the render order of elements, also called set ordering. So we can go in here, we can generate an image. So let's say a match tree gem sprite sheet. And for people who have not seen me work on this before, asking it to generate a sprite sheet can be a great hack to make sure that it generates a series of options for us to use in our assets. So press generate here and just wait for the image to generate. Oh, slow AI models are slow. Curved surface. Oops. Now we have a bunch of options for our match 3 game. Which style do we like the best? I think I like this one up here, right? So here's a bunch of different tiles that would totally work for a match 3 game. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna select or crop in and basically say we want this node here. And what this allows us to do is basically just sub-select this element, and it will automatically get background removed as well. So now this is the element that we are dragging around. And I like this one because it sort of has a black border around it. So we can demonstrate some of the issues that you would normally run into when building a match 3 game. So I'll select this element and I move it around, and you can sort of see the node that we are moving around is on top of the other nodes, except if we go over here, where suddenly it's behind. And the reason for that is that the order of which elements are attached to a container determines the order it renders in. So because we added the elements in order, this element down here will render on top of everything else, while this element up here will render below everything else. So if I drag this, you can sort of see how it's below everything. And this up here is above everything. And the reason that happens is this is the first element we attached, and then we sort of attach elements one at a time. And then down here, this is the last element we ever attached. Super simple way to fix this is basically reattach the element when we select it as an element we should be moving right now. So what we can go in here and do is basically say, add this element again. So now when we pick up an element, we just want to do what happened there. Oh, okay. So yeah, that's not particularly good, right? So I attached the node to the wrong element. Of course, we should add it to board. Let's do that instead. There we go. So that totally didn't work. So gem is attached to board. Board is an instance. So why did this not work? Oh, okay. Yeah. So we actually have to. So I was attaching the previous node that we had worked on, not the current gem. So let's use the gem. There we go. That should work. Yep. So now when we pick up even the first thing we attached, it's now on top of everything else, right? Of course, we don't want you to be able to drag an element here an infinite amount of distance away from its original starting point here, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to sort of hit a threshold value where we say should we swap or not, right? And what we can do in here is we can down here in the movement code. So in the movement code here, what we want to know is how far have we dragged this node away from its natural resting place, right? And the natural resting place in this case being the location that we determined that it should be at, which we already have defined, which is like target X and target Y. So we can go in here and we can say, what is the offset X? And calculate that to be the node's current X position subtracted from its current target X position, right? So how far have we dragged the element away from where it should be? And we can calculate that for the Y direction as well. And let's just write that out into the console. And you can see now, if I drag up, we get an increasing. So what this here is the x value and the y value. Let's just round these to make it easier to see. Clear the console here. So as I move up, you can see this number gets larger. If I move down, this number gets smaller. If I move left and right, you can also see that we hit some threshold value. Oh, no, we don't hit a threshold value, but we get larger and smaller values, sort of depending on which direction we are dragging in. And all we need to do now is basically say, if we have dragged this further than a threshold value to the right, then we want to swap right. If we drag this further than a threshold value to the left, we want to swap left. So while we now have sort of the basic scaffolding in place to actually sort of do swap right, swap left, swap up, swap down, what we would want to do is would want to go and implement also the logic to basically have two tiles swap, right? So when two tiles swap, what is happening is we are basically electing and saying like tile 1 and tile 2 should swap places, right? And there's two things that needs to happen. We need to animate that action, but we also have to update this internal structure, so silk the grid, to say where the particular tiles are. But let's start working on that particular problem set. So the first thing we would want to do is we would want to add a method on, I think we want to add it on board, that's where it belongs. So we are adding a function to swap two gems. Can't spell. So actually, let's try something fun here. So knowing how to code, again, we can instruct the AI and use it as a coding assistant, right? So please add a method to the board that allows me to swap two gems. Let's have the AI actually implement this function for us, because it's probably faster, better, and more clever than I am in implementing this method here. Okay, so what you can see is happening here is that it swaps the two elements in the board, and then it swaps the target position of those elements as well. So let's make sure we are actually able to ascertain if we're swapping the right elements, and let's do that by not just having one gem that can be swapped, but having a series of different gems that can be swapped, right? So down here in gem, currently we have like one asset that can be initialized. We would want to have a series of assets. Rather than only having one asset in gem, allow me to have up to 6 different assets in gem. This allows me to have multiple different gem types that can be... I just noticed, so I just stopped myself. So there's already a type declarator here, right? So it's already defining a random type with up to 5 different types, right? So let's just lean into that with the code. So in gem, after generating type, where you attach a gem element, use 5 different types of gems. That was bad prompting, but hopefully the AI is able to understand what's going on here. Yeah, that's perfect, right? So what it's doing now is like the first thing we did here is we generated a type, and now depending on the type, it's insetting an asset of different types, and this will allow us to sort of visually see that there's different elements inside of the game. Right now, for whatever reason, that did not work. What would cause this to not function? There are different assets. Oh, so that's great. So it adds these assets, and then it always adds the same asset again. So let's just remove that piece of code. That's an error, right? So now there's different asset types. We know we want all the assets to be 200 large. We can delete this one here. We're not using that anymore. But we have gem 1. Gem 1 is going to be looking like this. We want it to be 200 large. Gem 2, we got to find some art for that as well. Let's make it blue. Let's use this one here. And we're going to do some dirty things to this asset here, because what we'll notice here is this asset is not necessarily, so this asset happens to be a perfectly sized asset. That is not a guarantee, right? So as we go and create an asset for each of these different colors, we might find that some of these are not necessarily perfectly round, and in those cases we are perfectly square. But in those cases, we are just gonna make them perfectly square and pretend that the element was generated like that. So here's a simple example of that. We're just gonna force it to be perfectly square. It's probably gonna look a little bit squeezed, but I'm just gonna ignore that and basically be happy with that. So we have a yellow, we have a red, we have a blue. We would want a green now. Let's find a green one here. Here's a nice green one. And the last one, what color have we not used? Is there anything here we haven't used? Like we have a yellow. Yeah, there's one down here, which we haven't used. Let's try that. And the clever observer here will notice that the board got squeezed, but that's because when it generated a random gem, which we use to determine the size, generated one of the small ones. Now they're all the right size, so when I hit reload, the board should sort of realign and be the right size again. And that worked. So now we have a bunch of different nice tiles here, and we know we can go and we can swap 2 tiles. So let's just debug that. Let's just verify that we can actually correctly swap 2 tiles, right? So let's add a down function here to the game method, which means that if we press anywhere, this gets called. We can sort of prove that by writing out down when we press down. So that's a down method. It got called. Yay! Everything is working as this should. Let's just swap 2 random tiles then. So swap gems. It's called. Okay, and we need 2 gems. And the way we're gonna get 2 gems is we are gonna look at the grid array. So the board has a grid, and it has an X and Y position, and we know there's 8 of them. And just for debugging purposes, we are not gonna make that dynamic, right? So select a random tile on the x-axis and on the y-axis for gem 1, and do the same for gem 2. And now when I press, it should, ooh, what happened there? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so let's just have a look at that. So the swap games code here expected a row and a column offset. However, looking over down at gem here, it does not look like we actually set a row and a column offset. So let's just make sure we actually do that, right? Rather than trying to fix this method up here, let's just actually make sure we keep track of the row and column of each gem. Can't spell. There we go. Whoops. And then we actually also have to set that in when we actually initialize it, the gem. So that we call gem.row equals row. Okay, let's try that again. So now we can swap 2 random tiles, and we have the same issue again where you can sort of see when we do this, some of the the gems that we are swapping renders below where we would want them to render. And the way we solve that is basically just making sure that we reattach these to the board, which will make them render on top of everything else. So let's just reattach both of these. So now when we swap two random tiles, it will always happen on top of the code that is being moved here, right? Of course, we don't want to just swap two random tiles. We want to swap two tiles next to each other. So say for instance we want to swap this and we want to swap this, and we want that to happen in with a very nice sort of animation. I kind of like this simple thing that is going on here. I think that's perfectly appropriate for a successful swap. But of course, not all swaps are legal. So we need to handle the case where somebody is illegally trying to swap two tiles. And the animation we're using right now is probably inappropriate for that particular action, in that it takes a little bit of time for a gem to end up in a resting position. You can sort of see it sort of animates down to where we want it to be. The first thing we can try to do is basically just making the animation faster, right? So the swap is much faster now. Maybe a little bit too aggressive. I don't particularly like the feel of that, but we can sort of we can play with the speed that this happens. The smaller this number is, the faster it's going to be. Like, let's say we made it 17, you would see it be super slow, right? It is, however, relative to the distance offset that you're currently having. So it will be slowing down at the end, and most likely it's actually never exactly where we want it to do, because due to floating point, this is just going to create an ever infinitely smaller offset of where we actually want to be. And we can go and fix that if that turns out to be an issue. But for now, I'm just gonna ignore that particular issue. So we now have a method that can swap tiles, and we have a method that allows us to move a tile around. So if we just comment out this code down here where we're debugging that our swap code is actually working, we can now go and we can say in the move method here, if we have a current tile and our offset is above the threshold of should swapping two tiles, then swap the tile in the direction, right? So in this case, if offset X is larger than the threshold, so let's call it 50. Let's write out that we should swap X. And this is only going to work in one direction, right? So it's only working when we're swapping to the left right now, and not when you're swapping to the right. But we can fix that by basically saying only look at the absolute value of the offset X. So this would work in both the X and Y direction. So at some point when we are over the threshold, we start seeing the thing. This threshold is probably too small right now. So if offset X is smaller than 0, swap this gem with each gem on the left. Let's see here. Actually, I just realized here. Okay, so now we define row and column on the gem, but when we swap two gems, we don't update those values. So we would want to make sure that we actually update those references as well when we successfully swap two gems. So in the swap gems method on board, please make sure that the row and column values on each individual gems are also correctly swapped. I'm too lazy to write this myself, and this is a place where the AI is just so much better at writing this kind of code than I am. So it would take me a little bit to figure out how to do this consistently and debug that it's true, and the AI can just go and do it for me. So let's use the fact that the AI is pretty good at coding to actually allow it to code. Yeah, that should do. And it looks approximately right. And then we have this code here, where it says please implement this logic. So what I've done here is something I found particularly powerful. I inserted a element into the code with an instruction to solve a particular problem, and then I asked the AI to implement that particular logic. So let's see if this works. Okay, so it looks like I set this in the wrong direction. Yeah, so now when you can swap an element left, right? So if you passes a threshold, the elements will swap, right? And what we need to make sure here is that if we successfully swap, we no longer have the drag node available to us. So now when you swap left, the elements will swap left, right? So you can swap left. And now we would want to replicate this for all the different directions. So that would be here. Insert logic to swap in other directions as well. Where we are asking to insert logic to swap in other directions as well, please make sure that we can swap in both X directions and in both Y directions. Let's see. Yeah, we're going to swap in one direction, other direction. It's probably going to fail if we do this now. Drag it to the left. Nope. Okay, so that actually, for whatever reason, it's already made sure that we can sort of do horrible things in the wrong direction. Oh, there we got an error. So you are somehow able to create an error, and we will have to figure out what exactly happened there and how to prevent that from happening. It's just okay. So let's see if the AI can automatically identify and fix that error. Oh, so okay. So this is super interesting. So what's happening here is that as we go down this logic, we test if offset X is true, but we might have set the drag node to undefined. In this case, we would just want to return out of the method. We don't want to continue updating logic here. So we don't need to be able to swap in two directions at once, because that's actually not a feature you would have in a match tree game. So okay, what happened there? Oh, I actually have to save the code before it does the thing we wanted to. That's highly annoying. Okay, so now we can swap elements, and it sort of feels good because you can sort of drag it around. I think this threshold might be a little bit small still, sort of in terms of feeling. Oh, I forgot. Of course, I should save this so you guys can give it a go. Let me just share this again on all the places, so you guys can sort of get a feeling of how the game feels at this point in time. Okay, so of course, for us to have a real match tree game, if there is more than 3 elements that exist in right next to each other, so if you have 3 consecutive elements next to each other in any direction, we should remove those and have the whatever elements are existing above that fall down, and new elements being generated at the top and sort of be added into the game. So let's add that as a capability on the game. The first thing I think we should be adding is to determine if there is any matches happening where there's like 3 or more connections. And I think we want that as a general sort of convenience method on board. So add a method on board that loops over the entire board and determine if there's any free matches on the horizontal or the vertical direction. Create an array of those matches. So again, we're just asking the AI to write like the scaffolding code that I'm too lazy to write myself. Let's see what happened here. So now the AI has added a method called find matches, which I'm not checked it. I'm just going to assume it works, but it loops over any matches that exist, or over the elements that exist in the grid, and returns an array of potential matches, right? So we can go down here and actually, again, we can debug a little bit here. So in the down method here, we can go write out and what was the method name? Boop, boop. It was find matches, just to see if there's any matches. So when I press the game, it basically returns an array of matches, right? Where there's like all the different matches that exist, right? And we can sort of casually debug this by artificially creating matches. So now we have a example where there's 4 gems in a row. So we should see a match where there's 4 gems in a row, and that doesn't happen. So there's a bug somewhere here in this code, right? And if we go just look at this code here, it looks like we exit out if the match length is longer than 3. So update the check match method to allow for matches of 3 or more rather than only 3 as it is right now. I have no idea if that worked, but we can keep having a look here. So now we created one that is 4 long, and that seemed to work, right? So now there is a match here that is 4 long, and that seems to be detected here, that there is a match that is 4 long. Similar here, there seems to be a match, and we can do a little bit more sort of debugging down here, I need to remember that the AI can code and I don't have to do anything manually. So what we can do down here we're just going to say debug method. In the game down method where we are doing debugging, rather than just logging out the matches, loop over all the matches and set the alpha on the gems that have been matched to half opacity. Set all other grid nodes to full opacity. So again, we are just trying to create some debugging view for ourselves to make sure that all matches are found, just validating that the code that we have is actually working right. So what we're doing is we're basically saying if a gem is a member of a match, set the alpha to 0.5, otherwise don't, right? So every single element that is part of a match should have half opacity, and that seems to be working here. And if we then swap an element away where it's no longer matching and press down on the game, it should sort of change state, right? So we can sort of play to see if this works. It seems to generally work. See, yeah, like overall this looks correct, right? So it looks like there is the functions that we're having here in terms of detecting matches are functional, and like what we've done is we structurally verified that the code that the AI created for us is actually functioning right. So not necessarily a part of something you have to do while you're debugging, but I generally like to understand if my code is working. And actually, oops, here's a bug, right? So these three here, that should totally be a valid match, right? But for whatever reason, it's not getting matched here, right? So there is this code up here, the check match code, or this code up here, for whatever reason, does not detect all matches. And this is why we're doing this type of debugging preemptively. We're basically validating that all the cases that we can imagine are correctly triggering. And most likely what is happening here is that without having looked particularly heavily at the code, that this this match here, let's try to just artificially generate a test set here. So what I think is happening is that for whatever reason, gems that have already been matched once are excluded on other matches. So because this gem here has already been included in this row here up won't match. And we can sort of validate this by basically destroying this match set and testing again. And you can see now this is correctly detected. And then when it's part of a different match set, it's no longer detected. So let's ask the AI to fix that. In the check match method, it looks like a gem can only be part of one match. That is not how match tray games work. Any gem can be a member of multiple matches at the same time. Please fix this. So now the match code completely broke. Let's try that again. So if you're new here, just hitting revert and trying again is typically the way you fix a bug, right? Let's validate that the bug is the same bug as it was before by artificially creating the same layout or similar layout where, yeah, so there's the same issue once more. So I wonder actually what's going on there. Let me just have a little look at this here. So it looks like we are, the way this check match method works, when I just have a quick look at it, it first iterates over one direction and then over the other direction. And if it finds a match in one direction, it returns, and then the other direction gets ignored, right? So that's what's happening here. So let's try to come up with a directional solution for that particular issue. In the check match method on the board class, it looks like you can only have either a horizontal match or a vertical match. Please make sure that we support both horizontal and vertical matches at the same time. Slow AI being slow. Let's just try that again. Oh, so that was the microphone input being slow. That's as just like one of our AI providers being slow. In the match, I forgot what the method name was called. In the check match method on the board, please make sure that matches can both happen horizontally and vertically at the same time. Yeah, so this doesn't work either. That is great, right? So I'm just going to fix this manually because, again, we know how to code in this particular universe we are running today. So what we want here is if the horizontal match is more than 3 or the vertical match is more than 3, we want to return either, right? So if either of these are larger than 0.3, we want to return them. Otherwise, we want to return null. So we can go down here and we can say to return is an array. And we can say if this is more than 3, yeah. You can probably write this a lot prettier than I am here, but we're just being lazy. So now we are returning an array rather than returning an instance. And up here where we get the element back, what we want to do is rather than push the matches to, we want to concat them in. So that should now work. Did I break? I broke everything. That's great. If match takes match, there's match to. Oh, I actually have to return it. So now we should be able to construct the same setup and get both directions to match at the same time. Again, cheating. We know how to code, so we can fix the issues that the AI might generate, right? So we are now able to generate a match in either direction from this particular node because we are returning both matches in this direction and matches in this direction, right? And what we want to do now, rather than marking these as half opacity, what we would want to do is we would actually want to destroy them, right? So we would want to have some method that allows us to basically go and destroy these nodes, right? So there's a bunch of things that needs to happen there. Like one, we have to visually destroy the node. We have to take any element that exists in above that node that we destroyed and move them into the position where we actually want them, right? So this node would have to go down here. In this case here, and these 3 nodes would have to take up this position here. And then we would have to go and add in 3 new nodes that exist where these used to exist, right? So we already have the code here to basically determine if a gem should be destroyed or not. That problem is solved because we already had this debug code, but now we need to address the next part of that equation, which is we want to remove these elements and pop in new elements, right? So let me just give this a quick think. Yeah. So first of all, we would want to move this code up here, right? So this code here to find matches, we are going to add into a resolve a resolve method. So this code now exists on the board. So down here instead we can say board.resolve. Does exactly the same thing as before, but we changed where the code is happening, and because we want to encapsulate the complexity of updating the board inside of the board. So now we can find the matches here. We can now also go and destroy this particular node here, right? So rather than setting alpha, we are gonna destroy it. Boop. So now they disappear. We haven't removed them out of the grid. Of course, we need to. What needs to happen now is we need to actually make sure that the position in the grid is cleaned out, right? So we would do this by going in here, and we would set the position in the board to undefined. So we have now cleared out the position where this gem used to occupy a space. And what we then want to do when we are done destroying all the matching gems, we would want to move down all the other gems that exist on the board. So move down all gems into available spaces here. So in the code where we ask you to move down all gems into available space here, write the code that would detect if there's an empty spot below a given gem and move it down if that's the case. That's super interesting. So it implement this feature with swap gems, which is not necessarily the worst way of doing it. It is buggy though, so let's try that again. Oh, I introduced a bug. That's great. And you can't use the swap method because it expects a gem to actually be passed. Let's see if it can auto-fix it. All right, we don't want to do that. That's the wrong direction. So basically what it's doing right here, it's looking at... Let's just see what it's doing here. If there is a empty element above, then we swap down. Yeah, that's probably not what we want to do. So we're just going to ask it to rewrite this code here. So implement Let's see if that works. That worked. That partially worked, right? So everything is able to move down one element, right? So if we look here, we can see here's a 4 removal. These 3 should drop down 2 here, but they only drop down 1. And well, okay, I'm wrong there. Let's try that again. Let's see some cases. Okay, so here there's an empty space here. Of course, they should keep dropping down until everything has resolved, right? And there's a lot of very clever computer sciencey way of doing that. The stupid way, which is what we're going to do today, is we're just going to repeat this until no changes happen. So implement that this code is repeated until that the below code is implemented until no changes occur. Implement. That should do it. And it didn't, which is fantastic. Oops, stop that. So why did that not work? So we loop from the bottom. We look at the element above. If the above one is empty, then move down the node. Oh, it's probably because okay, we're gonna help it out by generating a bunch of supportive logic that's gonna help us move sort of gems around the screen, right? So I'm actually not entirely sure why this would fail. Target Y. We loop from the bottom. Go there, and then we go there. See, we go there, 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 we go there. That is funky. Yeah, the offset is also wrong. We'll have to fix that afterwards. We are just gonna add some convenience methods that allows us to better on the board class create a method that allows us to set the target X and target Y position of a gem based on its col and row values. We're just going to solve this the nuclear way. So we can stop doing this. Let's just write this out. Okay, so there's empty spaces in the grid. So this code here is definitely not doing what it should be doing. So Why does this not work? Let's just ask the AI to fix it. Re-implement to make it work as it should. Let's see what happens here. We are not gonna ask questions about that. So, hey, I have no idea why it was broken. Ask the AI to fix it. The AI fixed it, right? So now, when we press the button, all matches are removed and all elements drop down to the bottom. Of course, what we want to do now is we want to fill in the spaces above here with new elements, right? We want to make sure that that new elements are added to the game. So let's go here. Insert new gems if there is empty spaces in the grid. Okay. Implement. I really need sort of a select something and then right click and implement. I'm gonna add that to the editor. I think that is gonna be make people who know how to code a lot more efficient using the tool. Yep. So if we just reload here, so every time we click, all matching gems are being removed. So we can make a match here, boop, and then we can click, and then it gets removed. And so, of course, the problem right now is that these gems here, right? If we just do that again, right? Like we create a match here. So here we have a match. And when I press, these three are going to be removed. These are going to animate down, but we're going to instantly insert 3 new gems in these positions here, which is not going to look particularly well, right? So while it did exactly what we wanted it to do, it's sort of not clear to the user what happened here. What we would want to do is we would want to insert the elements. Let's say when we remove these 3 here, these 2 here, what we would want to do is we would want to insert 3 new outside of the board area here, right? So in the context of this code here, we will want this code to compensate for what is the topmost gem element, right? So code to update to make sure gems are inserted correctly. So where we ask you to update the code to make sure gems are inserted correctly, what we want you to do is make sure that new gems are spawned such that they are offset on the y-axis to be spawned above the board. Let's see if that works. Yeah, that kind of works, right? However, of course, we need the target position to be set, right, on the gem, right? So let's just try something here. Let's make a match. Okay, so why does that animation not look correct? Let's slow it way down. Where was the code that set the speed? Boop 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 boop. That is. Let's go 70. Oh, so something is definitely wrong there, right? Oh, wait, it's pushed up by 1. Yeah, that's absolutely not what we want, right? So you can see here. Yeah, okay. So that's not particularly well done on the AI, right? So what I think we want to do here, we're just going to fix this manually, right? So for each column, right? So here's a column. We have a top position. So a top position where we can spawn a tile, and this starts out being 0. So this is our top position where we want to spawn an element, and what we want this top position. Bob. How do we? Fundamentally, what we want to do is we want to understand how many nodes did we remove, and then we want to offset the amount of tiles above based on how many we removed, right? So the first thing we need to ensure we have is that we have a list of how many elements were removed, right? So we can go in here and create an array, one for each column. We know we have 8 of those, so I'm just gonna. This is dirty, right? Because this will no longer work if you changed how many elements we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Actually, let's do this right. So offset wise is an array. In here for each. We can't do this. Okay. So boop, boop, boop. Minus serves con, AP plus, and then we insert. Okay, so now we created a setup offset wise, and in here we can basically just say on the column add 1 element, and down here we should be able to console that, log that out. And get a count of how many were removed. And based on this count, we can just multiply that into the gem size. Boop. And that did absolutely nothing. Oh, yeah, great. That almost worked. Let's just try this again. So why does that not work? Let's just create an artificial free. So we do this from the top. Oh, so we have to. Let me think. We don't want to set target X here, first of all. So let's just clean this. Rows, columns, row above, column. Okay, so let's just make sure that this actually works as it should. So here we should get 0, and then we should get 3, and then we should get 3, So it's 002. Okay, so that's wrong. What's going on there? It's great. So 2. So so I think I am messing up here. Let's see. So this should be 1, and then it should be 1, and then it should be 1. And that is definitely not what we're seeing here. So let me just give this a think. So we loop through. So each row. No, this should be column. Am I being an idiot here? Probably am. Let's reset this here. So 1, 2, 3. That's 1, 2, 3. 1, 0, 0, 2. So self.column. This is defined outside. That should be fine. I'm just gonna row call. BGG on YT ask how long the stream is going to be. It's going to be until I'm done. I want this thing to work. So is that loop backwards? That shouldn't matter. So let's just see here. So this should be 66655555544 00111 111. Okay. So there is 1, 2 under one case. Okay, I have no idea how this code is working. That's great. Debugging AI code, so much fun. Console row. Oh. Just for my own sanity here. Three, 4, 5, 2. Okay, so in the 0 case, let's just not set this here. That's wrong. So we have modified something here. Yeah, and now it's just inserted exactly. No. Yep. That's a hack. It works. Not what we want though. Might actually just be the solution. Let me just think here. Column, so we have row. What we're doing now is we're just always spawning them 8 above. Okay, so it's because our baseline is the position in the where we want them to be, and it shouldn't be. It should be how many elements we inserted. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of very nice way of fixing this. We might do that a little bit later in the stream, but for now I'm just gonna accept that we spawn the elements outside of the screen here. I think that's perfectly fine. So basically what we're doing is any new element we are adding, we just spawn them outside at the screen at the top here. And then we move them down. No, that is not what we want. That is lazy. We don't do lazy here, right? So what we want to do here, so let's set this to 0, right? So now they all spawn at the same location up here. And what we want to do now is we want to space them up based on how many Y's offset existed in that particular column, right? So we can do this by taking the Y offset of the column and multiplying it by the gem size. And we want to do that negatively. And we actually want to count this up. Let's see if this works. Yep. So now when we spawn them, they get adjusted according to how many tiles were removed below them. So that most definitely did not work out as expected. Let's just have a look here. So if we set this to 0, they spawn at 0, right? And then the column offset. So the column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many columns do we have there? Why did that count 4? There was not 4 changes. Oops, there's no changes there. There was not 5 changes. There was 2 changes. So something is wrong. It's just because this has to be row. If that's the case, that's crazy. Nope, that's not what it is. My brain is toast. We are counting the amount of columns. Okay, so let's just look at this. There should be 0 in the first one. That was 0 in the first one. Okay. So here we are again. So here we are removing 3 from column 2 and we're getting 4. Why are we getting 4 when there's only 3? 1, 2, 3, 4. Is there any other matches? No, so there's 4. That is definitely not the value we got there. So the column, row, so it's spaced like this, and the column we remove. Yeah, okay. I see what I'm doing. I'm being particularly daft today. Let's make sure we actually count the amount of elements we have removed at the right location, which is up here. not down there. So now the elements should be pushed up based on how many were removed, and that's exactly what is happening right now. And then yeah, there we go. So I was counting up the amount of removals we had on a given column in the wrong location, and that resulted in us inserting the gems in the wrong location. So that is fixed now. I shouldn't be coding when I'm tired. Let's go down here and add the speed again. So now you can create matches, and those matches results in okay. Let's just see. Just debugging, just making sure everything works as it should. Okay, so now we have the ability. So we are still only resolving the board when we hit the down method, right? You know, we would want to resolve the board every time nodes are at rest, right? So an interesting thing that is happening right now is that we don't particularly care if a node is currently moving or not. We can match it even if it's not in the right direction, right location. And we don't want to be able to do that. Like you should only be able to match a node if it's currently in the right location or sort of in this resting position in the board, right? So to first do this, we would want to add some logic to the gem to determine if it's currently resting. So is it close enough to where it should be? And we already know if it's close to where it should be, because in the gem code up here we have an update method that basically moves it to where it should be, right? So right here. So let's see. Come on, unlock. In in the gem update method, set a variable on the gem if the current gem is at its resting place by determining how far away it is from its resting place. Now we have an at rest method here that basically says, are we at a resting location? We're just going to predefine that to false, right? So now we know if a node is at its resting position. And what we want to do then is make sure that when we do matches up here, we only count in matches where the gem is at rest, right? So we have a method here that is find matches that calls check match. So let's go find check match, right? Here, and what we will want to do here is we don't want to be able to test against gems that are not currently at rest. Update the check match method on the board such that it ignores gems that are currently not resting. I don't think it did that well enough. So we can test against a gem that is at rest. That is fine. However, it still has absolutely no problem testing against a grid element that is not at rest. So we just got to fix that. And fundamentally, what we're doing here is we're making sure we can't test against an element that is not at rest. Dot at rest. Ooh, sweet. So now nothing works. It's probably because the gems are not correctly put to rest. Up here, let's just have a look at that. No. Oh, so it is because... No, that should actually work. Let's just have a look at this. In the update method here, let's just... So they are all at rest. Okay. And I know what I did. Yeah. Yeah. I inverted this test. So now we can test again. We cannot test against elements that are currently moving. So what we would want to do here is just in update on the board, just auto remove things when they are at rest to sort of... So now we're just calling this all the time, right? Like this is a little bit dirty, but it works. Let's see. Okay. I think stuff gets moved to at rest too quickly. Okay, so that's great. In terms of the gem method here, so right now we don't do that rest code if it's the constellation node. We should, like, if we're dragging an element around, it shouldn't resolve until it's in its home position. Boop, boop, and we are still seeing cases where it happens right away. That shouldn't happen. So I wonder what is wrong there. Boop, that looked correct. Boop, that was correct. Boop, that was correct. That was not correct. So for whatever reason, at rest are sometime been allowed to trigger too early. What would result in that? I guess it's about, like, probably what is happening here is that elements are not, like, the second we start moving an element, we should set at rest. So when we insert a new element here, let's see. Up here, we insert a new gem, and then we want new gem to be not at rest. What happened there? Oh, okay. So yeah, this is the same thing again, right? When we swap gems, we would want the gems to be not addressed. I'm just going to save this so you guys can give it a preview. Okay. Yep. Pop, 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 pop. Okay, so the thing I don't like now is that I think this offset code is a little bit too slow. Yeah, that's still problematic. So this code here now that sort of swaps in how close we are to the final position where we test if we should swap. You can sort of see it gets slower and slower and slower, and it takes forever for this thing to actually detect that we are in location. And one way of solving that is just increasing this threshold, right? So when you are closer to your resting place, you sort of swap in. But I think I want to solve this in a different way. What I want to do is I want to set this offset up here. I want to give a minimum speed that the elements can move, right? So I think we want to have this acceleration or whatever we want to call it on the elements. Actually, that's an interesting conversation. Probably what we want to do is rather than animating down in this method we're doing here, I think what we want to have is I think we want to have a momentum on the elements that is going to give us a much nicer animation, right? So add momentum to the gems. So now the element should have velocity. So let's just remove this here. Yeah, okay. We want the velocity to be incremental. Yeah, that's beautiful. So now the velocity can get too high. Woo, 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 woo. Right? So what we want to do here now is we want to limit the velocity in terms of how far we can get to, or how close we can be. Either that, or we want to add some intersection code, right? So stuff moves faster and faster the further it is away right now, and then what we will want to do is we will want these to be able to sort of bounce in to the gem below it, right? And at the bottom here, we wouldn't want to be able to allow it to move faster, right? So while this is obviously completely utterly broken as it is right now, I think we found something we can turn into a very good experience, right? So let me just think about this for a second here. So this goes faster and faster. And what we would want to do is FireX. Let me just think. How do we do this? No, we're just going to continue this path here. I'll explain what I'm doing in a second here. So we actually only have to do this and modify y. Okay. Let's just see. We're back here. No. We want to be able to. We want to. Okay, so. So first we calculate the offset of. Are we offset on the. Like, what is our current offset? So that's the first thing we're going to calculate. So we have that here, right? And then down here, after we have. So what we're trying to detect here is, let's do this on the y-axis. What we're trying to detect is the sign of our offset changed? So have it crossed over the space where we want? And if we cross over, we should just stop moving, right? You know, so so here we have, so now we have two variables. We have the offset before we applied our change and the offset after. And if the signage of these are different, then we should basically stop moving, right? So if 0 and then new offset larger than 0 or, and we want to parenthesize this. Then self.velocity x equals 0 and self.x equals self.target. And I have to work with y here because otherwise I mess up. So let's see if this works in 1 second. Most definitely did not. I have to remember the. Yeah, so these can move infinitely on one axis. Yeah. So now on the y-axis, we only accelerate towards our end goal until we actually hit our end goal. Let's try this on the x-axis as well, just to see how it feels. Lot of signs to change here. I'm sure there's a much prettier way of doing this. This is why I should not be allowed to code. Yeah, that kind of works. It will feel better if you are able to impart velocity on Let's just try making this slightly faster. See if we can just hide. It's too fast. Slower. What I'm doing here is I'm just trying different variables until I find something I think feels pretty good. It's too fast. Like the dropping down is still too fast. Okay, so this is interesting. So I like the feel of how elements drop in now, right? Actually, there is no, like, so we have acceleration now. So this velocity multiplier here should actually just be, this should be a fixed variable. There shouldn't be acceleration just because you're further away right now. So let's fix that. Was that the wrong way around? I can't do vector math. 1 second. Give me a second here. The thing is, we want this to always be 1 or 0, right? So rather than being like we have the offset here. Oh, that is in reverse. That is great. This should be the same. So should this. And then we actually have to use the right order. Let's just make sure that we are consistent. And there we go, yeah. And we want this to always be 1. So now the acceleration should be fixed. Why does this not work? Not a number. That is great. Oh, so it can be 0. Yeah, that's fantastic. How else do I? We want it to be. We want the modifier to be a fixed value. Let's just. Just gonna fix it there. That's the X offset. Yeah, wrong way around. Let's try replicating this. Otherwise, the old logic was kind of okay. Oh, that doesn't work with our check code down here for obvious reasons. Yeah, we're just gonna keep the old code. I'm too lazy to fix that. Let's just go back in time until things work. There we go. We're gonna keep this one here. So there's one thing more that we really want to fix, which is that we would not want you to be able to create an invalid swap, right? So this is well, something is wrong. Okay, let's just fix that first. Okay, yeah, okay. So this is not a fixed state. Let's try that again. Okay, so this is, let's try to see if we can find an invalid swap. This is an invalid swap, right? So here we managed to swap two nodes that shouldn't be swappable, right? You know, so in this case, if you swap and it didn't result in a successful removal of some elements, we should swap them back, right? You know, we don't want to allow this this swap here to happen if it wasn't a valid swap. So down here we have this method here that says swap gem, and what we would want to try to do is we would want to identify that these two nodes are currently being swapped by us. Is there any? I think that's the only place we call swap gem actually. Yeah, I don't think we use it anywhere else. We were using it at one point, but we are no longer using it outside of. Let's just have a look here. Swap gem. Yeah, no. Okay, so this is the only place we're using it right now. So we can actually implement this up in the swap gems method here, right? But fundamentally, what we can do is we can basically say swap gem dot is swapping true. So these gems are currently being swapped, right? We probably want to add that onto the gem itself down here. That is. So by default, it's false, but when we are swapping, it's true, right? And then in the context of our resting code up here. So let's see here. So we have some resting code where we're testing if a gem is currently resting, or where we're updating the resting code. So we're doing that here, right? So here we're testing if at rest, right? So if we are currently at rest, and self dot is swapping, just write out into console. This is a state that now exists, right? So 1 second, I just want to clear my console here. Let me just reload. Oh, that's why my browser is getting super slow. There we go. I have like an infinite amount of debug elements out there. Okay, there we go. So now we swap these two elements. They are at rest, but they were swapping, right? I think what we would want to do is we would want to what we're going to do is we're going to do swap target instead. So we're going to save a reference to the gem that we swap with. So now we save sort of a reference in both directions to say this is what we actually swap with in terms of in the swap. This is not the prettiest code in the world, but what we can do then is down here we can basically say if we are at rest and swap target is defined and swap target that at rest. So we are at rest, there is a swap target, the swap target is also at rest. Then we write out the console log. So when we swap these here, great, self.swap target. So when we write this out here, we can see we now successfully swapped where the swap target is at rest, we are self at rest. And what we would also want to know is if we still exist, right? So was destroyed. So I guess this is actually something I want to add to the engine. I want to tell the engine if the elements still exist in some clever way. We don't support that right now, which is a little bit stupid. So we do have a general destroy method, and we should be able to determine if an element is destroyed. But anyway, we say we are destroyed, right? So down here, if we are at rest, if we have a swap target, if the swap target is at rest, and we are not destroyed, and the swap target is not destroyed, then write this out, right? So that is this case here. If this happens, we want to swap these back. Swap gems, right? Self.swap target. And that should actually do it. Oop. Nope, it does not. Is the order important? Whoops, something is wrong. So let's see here. Gem 1 swap target leave gem 2. Gem 2 swap target leave gem 1. Yeah, that's something to clean up here as well in a moment. Oh, okay, yeah. Let's see if the AI can auto fix this. It's board.swap gems, so that worked. Okay, great. So after we call this method, we want to make sure that we can't swap anymore. Simple swap target, dot swap target. So now you're not allowed to make well, that particular one should be allowed, which is great. Okay, so oh, that's great. Okay. So this happens in update. So the problem is the swap back now happens before we test if elements should be destroyed. And that's down to the order of update. The question is if there is a easy way of fixing that. Let me just think. We're just gonna find a hacker solution to solve this, because that's how we roll. Swap back, port swap gem, self.swap target, self.swap target. Yeah, so that code actually still works. Boop, 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 boop. So an incredibly dirty way of solving this is to just delay this for 1 tick, right? So making sure that the intersection code has an opportunity to run before we swap back. And we are totally just going to solve it like that. Swap count equals 0. If swap count 0, then that should actually do it. Yeah, and of course we shouldn't swap back there. That shouldn't happen because and filter is destroyed, swap target is destroyed. So it shouldn't be able to do that. Let's just see what happens here. Okay, so for whatever reason, destroyed is not correctly set. Is destroyed, isn't that what we called it? Solve. The dynamic nature of JavaScript is so fun. Was destroyed, is destroyed. Yeah, okay. Can't spell or can't use. There we go. That should do it. That might actually just be the issue in general up here. Let's see if this counting thing is even necessary. I think it might not be. I wasn't expecting that we would have to do stuff like this, so let's just try this. Nah, we actually do. So now we are. Yeah, that works. Yay! Okay. So now we have the basic functionality of a match 3 game. I'm not happy with these animations. I'm not happy with the like I'm reasonably happy with the animation when they sort of fall in from the top here. I think there should be more sort of say for instance when a row hits a element below, it should totally sort of kick that element out and have a little bit of animations and things like that. Not gonna add this in this particular game, right? You know, and also like BGG on YouTube wants like explosions when you make a match. I think that's a task for the reader. This, while still fairly simple, is the basic foundation for a match 3 game. We have all the sort of the basic logic that you need to build a match 3 game here. We have nodes with different types. Those nodes will recursively generate removals of gems if there is possible moves, and it will only do so if things are not currently moving that should be moving. It also allows you to, so the implementation we've done allows you to have multiple things going on at the same time. So we're going to match this here, and then we're subsequently going to match this, and the animation will happen at the same time. Okay, I'm too slow. But fundamentally, what this particularly game allows you to do is have multiple changes that are happening at the same time without necessarily breaking the user's ability to play the game. So the user always have the ability to do swaps right now, even though things are happening in the game. And that's typically a feature most simple match 3 games doesn't have. But when we originally designed how the swapping logic should work, we made sure that we would be able to support that use case. That was sort of part of the very early design principles we did at the start of the stream. So I think I'm this is not my best work. I'll be honest with that. But I think we're going to end the stream here. We have a basic match 3 game that sort of had the basic features that you would expect out of a match 3 game. So let's make this public. Let's call it stream 4. And I think what we might want to do is we might want to fix this up and turn it into a proper game that is sort of a fully implemented match 3 game in our next stream, hopefully next Friday. I think there's a lot of opportunity to make this particular game feel incredibly well and sort of be a fully functional match 3 game. But I'm sort of running out of time that I can add towards this today. So thank you for joining, for all the people who joined the stream today. I'm gonna end it here, and I hope you all have a fantastic Friday. Let's go here. Boop.